Tonight on KGW News, monkeypox makes its way into Washington state. Why health officials aren't too worried. Plus,
it was yet another gut shot of 3 years full of them.
Restaurants barely hanging on. Why senators voted to shoot down a pandemic lifeline. And can the love defense get a romance novelist off the hook for murder?
Dan and Nancy made a promise to share their lives.
Closing arguments in the Nancy Brophy trial. Your news starts now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. And we begin tonight in southeast Portland with what appears to be a disturbing assault. The victim in this case, police say a woman who suffered critical injuries and was found in a car wash parking lot. Catherine Cook has our top story.
I just saw a lot of police officers out there, and I just thought, with the yellow tape going around, I thought, well, what the heck's going on, you know?
It's how a lot of neighbors, including Cindy here, felt when police responded to the Eco Car Wash on Southeast 82nd near Holgate. Early Monday morning, police say a car wash employee found a woman in the back of their parking lot. They say she'd been severely assaulted. Medics rushed her to the hospital.
It hit me hard. I felt really bad, you know, and I just couldn't believe it. I just thought it was a little too close, you know. I just can't believe anybody would do that to a woman.
Cindy, who didn't want to show her face on camera, has lived here for 30 years. She says a lot has changed about the neighborhood, but the people on this street still take pride in their homes and value their safety. Car wash employees tell me safety is their #1 priority for customers. They don't think what happened will impact them, but they are concerned by what may happen here outside business hours. Trespassers, they say, are a big problem, whether it's people rummaging through dumpsters or leaving trash and sleeping in the back area where the assault victim was found.
I hope she makes it, you know, and I hope whoever did this, they find.
At this point, investigators have not released any information on the suspect. At last check, the victim was in critical condition. If you have any information on this case, you're asked to call Portland Police. David.
Catherine Cook reporting. Thank you, Catherine. Well, new tonight, health officials in the Seattle area say they are investigating what they call a presumptive case of monkeypox. The symptoms were reported by a man who recently traveled internationally. He is now recovering at home. His is one of 4 likely cases in the U.S., along with another confirmed case. Officials say the virus can affect anyone, but unlike COVID, it is rare and not airborne. Transmission requires someone to have close physical contact with an infected person. And while monkeypox isn't actually an STD, health officials say many of the cases do appear to have been spread during sexual contact.
I would not be surprised to see additional cases of monkeypox. I don't think that poses anywhere near the threat that COVID-19 poses to us. I don't think we'll see the levels of transmission. I think it will ultimately be brought under control. But as we've learned with COVID-19, you can't always predict what's going to happen in the future. That's just my best guess.
Some important context there. Okay, the illness starts with a fever, headache, chills, and swollen lymph nodes, and then after a few days, a rash. Now, most people recover in 2 to 4 weeks. The WHO says the virus has been circulating at mostly low levels in Africa for the last 4 decades. A former FedEx delivery driver has been sentenced to more than 8 years in prison for exposing himself to children. Now, we first told you about Alejandro Negrete. When he was arrested last July in Aloha, he was accused of offering a 9-year-old girl candy while she was sitting on her front steps and then exposing himself. Negrete later admitted to sexually abusing other children in the area while on the job. He pleaded guilty in court and apologized to the victims' families. Closing arguments are underway in the murder trial of a local romance novelist, and after nearly a month of testimony from investigators, friends, and Nancy Crampton Brophy herself, it will soon be up to a jury to determine if she shot and killed her husband. Now, prosecutors kicked it off by focusing on the financial struggles Nancy and her husband of 26 years, Dan, faced together. The deputy DA also pointed to surveillance video that showed Nancy's van driving by the scene, the Oregon Culinary Institute, the morning of the murder at a time when she said she was at home writing.
The person who went in there also was not just lucky. A random attack that just happened to be at the exact same time that Nancy Brophy was at the Culinary Institute, the exact same time and using the exact same weapon, same make and model and caliber that Nancy Brophy happened to own.
Now, worth noting that part of that firearm was never recovered. Under oath, Nancy admitted to driving by the scene for a few minutes. As she said, she wrote notes but denied killing Dan. Now, defense lawyer Lisa Maxfield repeated her argument that the Brophies were so in love, Nancy could not have done it. And here's what Maxfield said to push back on the state's assertion that money was a motive.
The bottom line is that Nancy Brophy was far better off, far better off with Dan Brophy in her life. Even if you look at it just in pure economic terms, even if you ignore the love, even if you ignore all of those intangibles that couldn't go into that calculation, she was better off with Dan alive.
Now, court resumes tomorrow morning. The state's going to have a final chance to make a rebuttal before the jury begins deliberating. We, of course, will keep you updated here at KGW.com and on air if and when they reach a verdict. Well, an update now on one of the outstanding races from the Oregon primary. We now know who will face Portland City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty in a runoff election. Now, Administrative Judge Vadim Wazirski on the right conceded the race, accepting a third-place finish, and that means Portland voters will choose between Hardesty and the man in the center, businessman Rene Gonzalez, in November. Well, let's take you to Clackamas County now, where the official in charge of elections didn't seem very happy to see our crew today. She hid, there it is, behind a single sheet of paper and also declined a request for a follow-up interview. Now, keep in mind, Sherry Hall is an elected official. Meanwhile, staff are making slow and steady progress. They're hand duplicating ballots with blurry barcodes that had machines rejecting them. The county, by the way, processed nearly 10,000 more ballots today, but Hall asked for another day in order to give the state a timeline and perhaps a deadline on when the counting is going to be finished. So while we wait here, Pat Doris took a look at what the story termed Hall's history of problems.
Sherry Hall is a Republican and was elected to the nonpartisan county clerk position back in 2002. She's been reelected 4 times since then and is up for reelection again this fall. The primary isn't the first time Hall has found herself in the headlines. In 2004, Hall learned about an error in hundreds of ballots and did not tell the public about it. Then in 2010, another major printing error. She had to send corrected information to voters because the voters' pamphlets were wrong that time. And she also mistakenly put 2 races on the May ballot that were supposed to go on the November ballot. The next year, she accepted signatures that were invalid to place an urban renewal initiative on the ballot. And the year after that, in 2012, a part-time county elections worker was accused of tampering with 2 ballots to cast additional votes for Republicans. The worker ended up pleading guilty. Hall was not implicated. In 2018, Hall made headlines again for sending out voter information with her own name prominently displayed all over it, while she was again running for re-election. Now, that's not illegal to do in Oregon. That as the elections clerk, you can do that. But it is illegal in other states, and several voters filed complaints. Throughout the past week, we've heard from a lot of you in Clackamas County saying it is time for Sherry Hall to resign. And the Oregonian over the weekend agreed, publishing an editorial calling for her resignation. So what do you think? You can send me an email at thestory@kgw.com or leave a message at 503-226-5090 and share your opinion.
And our thanks to Pat and team for putting that together. Worth noting, over the weekend, other counties and the Secretary of State's office also chipped into the counting. A reminder, you can catch the story each weekday at 6 right here on KGW. Well, nurses at 2 more Portland area Providence hospitals are voting on whether to strike. They work at Providence Willamette Falls Medical Center and Providence Milwaukee Hospital. The voting process got underway today. Worth noting here, though, that if nurses say yes, there won't automatically be a strike, but a yes vote will give the union the power to call one if negotiations with Providence do not go as they hope. The nurses union says it is focused on COVID safety standards and affordable health care, among other things. We spoke with the CEO at Providence Milwaukee this afternoon. He says they have a few bargaining sessions coming up soon, and so he is hopeful for a resolution.
We are actively at the table with them, having what we hope to be constructive conversations. Clearly, you know, we value talking rather than walking, so we want to resolve this as quickly as we can.
And you might remember nurses at Providence St. Vincent voted to authorize a strike back on May 3rd. The union says since then they've held 2 bargaining sessions, but there have been, quote, no significant movements to report, end quote.